Hey, Corona TV viewers, this is Peter Keys from Lynns Career. I want to wish you all a happy birthday.
First of all, let's just do the elbow bump because we can't do the handshake right now.
Hello, everybody on Corona TV. This is Macy Gray.
You're smiling, and I saw your beautiful daughter earlier, who I said could come on the show anytime. Welcome, Shiv Singh.
Thanks for having me, Joseph. Great to be with you.
Well, hello, everybody. What is it today? Let me check. Oh, it's Wednesday, October 21st. It's Hump Day, and it's a very special episode of Corona TV. They're all special, but this one in particular is special because, as you will see shortly, I'm welcoming my business partner, Lynn Power, onto the show. But you're actually going to find out a lot about her entrepreneurial spirit, about her passions, about her vision, and what this is behind me. Anybody want to take a guess in terms of what this is behind me? You can take a guess. I'll tell you if you're right or if you aren't right. But it's also special because it's Reptile Awareness Day. So this, I guess, would be where we, honor and commemorate all of our members of Congress, because they truly are snakes in the grass. But in all seriousness, if you have a reptile that you're taking care of, I'm aware of you, I guess. I'm not really sure how else to celebrate Reptile Awareness Day. Paul says, wow, amazing. You're going to have to be more specific. What is amazing? What's in the background, or Corona TV, or the fact that it's Reptile Awareness Day, or as Phil McIntyre says, pickles? I'm not really sure. I think maybe you've been eating what's in the background that I'm getting all of these interesting comments. And hello to Joey. Good to have you back, Joey. I've missed you. I know you were away for a couple of days. All right, well, let's get into it. Because it is Hump Day, obviously Lynn Power is in the middle of the week. Tomorrow, I go from a current business partner to a former business partner, my first boss when I moved to the US, Faith James, and then Lisa Bedell takes us and finishes an amazing week, which, as I've mentioned before, is a very special week. It is the first week since I started Corona TV that I've had 5 women on the show Monday through Friday, and it won't be the last, I can assure you. But today we're going to focus on one in particular, one very special person, Lynn Power. She is the co-founder of the HMS Beagle, but she's also the co-founder and CEO of MASAMI, and you're going to hear all about that. But first, let's just do some birthdays. Sorry, Drew, that your name is a little bit cut off as well, but happy birthday to all of you. Kim Lakowski-Lee, all the way in Sydney, Barry Briggs, and Anton Margolis celebrating his 50th. I only highlight people who are turning 50 because that's what I'm turning this year. And then, of course, to my friends on LinkedIn, my contacts, Craig Levinson, Amit Verma, Dante, Islam, etc. Well, let's get into the seated soliloquy, shall we? And today, the soliloquy is actually called Are You Okay? But before I do that, I just got a few more comments, which I thought I would just mention. Paul is saying the fact that it's live on LinkedIn. Yeah, it is pretty cool that the show is live. Part of the joy and part of the benefit of this is that live is a bonus, right? Live to me is value add. It's the fact that I can actually, comment, to someone like Quentin George, who I haven't seen in ages, my fellow countryman. Quentin, I hope you're well. Reptile Awareness Gummies. That's probably what everybody is on today, no doubt. That everyone is getting the comments that I'm getting. Leslie said South Florida has real problems with certain reptiles, iguanas. So just be aware of those iguanas as well. And Tom Morris says, I thought it was US Cabinet Members Day, but close enough. Indeed. But yeah, let's get into the soliloquy, and it is aptly called today, Are You Okay? I'm okay, you're okay. Are we in shock? How would we know it? 2020 has brought with it a lethal cocktail of internal economic, social, and health stress and strain, coupled with an explosive external climate of divisiveness, unrest, and injustice. I'm no expert in mental health, nor do I profess to be. That said, I recognize that there are forces in play that many of us are just not equipped to deal with, and nor am I. Rather than make the assumption about how anyone is feeling it's probably a good idea just to ask people the question, how are you doing? Are you okay? Tell me how you're feeling. Now, we'll get into the subject further today on the show, but for now, I wanted to share 2 thoughts about the current state of affairs. The first is this idea of numbness, nothingness, not feeling anything. That's kind of how I feel on any given day. So am I in denial? Well, denial is not a river in Egypt, so I'm told. Or is it a good thing just to be getting on with it, focusing on little victories and dealing with small setbacks, as opposed to being overwhelmed with the enormity of it all? Maybe I'm lucky. Is this a benefit of living in the suburbs, a product of never leaving the house, which I barely do? I barely do leave the house. The other thought I have is about the delay factor. When it hits, it's going to hit big. Is this the calm before the storm that represents a shock or an aftershock that is far greater than the initial tremor or quake? Is the big one coming sooner than we think? Civil war, the postal service going postal, even worse. I couldn't say really, but for now, this is what I can deal with, what advice I can give, and what I know to be true, with apologies to real psychologists with real degrees. Number 1, focus on hope, positivity, and optimism. Number 2, talk a lot to a lot of people. Number 3, keep exercising your body and your soul. And number 4, subscribe to Corona TV. Okay, strike point number 4, but maintaining a sense of humor is the real point number 4, and it's absolutely key. So let's keep talking, shall we? I'm not going away anytime soon, and I really hope that you won't either. Well, now it's time, as you know, to bring on my guest, Lynn Power, and a little bit of background on Lynn for you. Lynn Power spent her almost 30-year career running and transforming agency brands. She has expertise in transforming organizations from top to bottom, including capabilities, organizational structure, talent, and culture. She recently left the big agency world to form a brand consultancy called the HMS Beagle, where I happen to sit at the helm with her as the admiral. And the HMS Beagle focuses on helping brands navigate survival. She's also putting her experience to work as the CEO of MASAMI, a premium clean hair care brand which launched in February 2020. Prior to her entrepreneurial move, Lynn was CEO of J. Walter Thompson, New York, responsible for the flagship office of WPP's $1.5 billion iconic agency, the oldest advertising agency in the world and the largest. Lynn believes that business success relies on building a team that respects and nurtures ideas as well as the people who create them. She believes in moving at the speed of culture, eliminating barriers, and empowering entrepreneurial thinking while embracing a player-coach leadership approach. And I'm sure we'll get to hear about many of those items today. So without further ado, Lynn, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. Very exciting.
It's about time that I had you on, right? I mean,
Yeah, I know. Well, I think we all thought the idea of a Corona TV show would only last a couple months, and then here we are, and it's like you're going to be doing this, what, 2 more years?
Well, I made a commitment to not giving up and putting my head down and doing it for 2 years. But yeah, I don't even know how I don't know what's going to happen. It continues to change and tweak and evolve. At one point, I thought I would just do it every day, and then I started, burning out on the weekends. And now, it's the routine of doing it every day that I actually think, talking about mental health, and I've been very, very, upfront about this to people. I think it's like kind of kept me from going crazy, just the routine, So, I mean, obviously there's a lot going on in your life, and we'll talk about, everything soon enough. But from a routine standpoint, what are some of the things that you've done to kind of feed your body and feed your soul, during this lengthy time?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think the first thing is I've started doing yoga every morning. I found this YouTuber and it's Yoga with Adrienne. And it's awesome because she does these 30 days of yoga courses where you can just burn through each month and then start a new one. And it's like, I don't know, about a half an hour. So it's not overwhelming. And it's just a really good way to kick off the day.
I've only done, let me see if I'm spelling that correctly. Did I spell that correctly, or is it
one N, not two?
And with an E, I can make changes.
I think she has an E. I will, you know what? I'll check, but I think it's like that, but with one N. But she's fantastic. It's just, it's a really good course.
It's amazing to me how many, you know, of these products or channels or, you know, media properties have you know, been born in a global pandemic, like Corona TV for a second, you know, you know, as an example, but for the most part, exercise and the ability to take exercise inside a house or a small apartment has just been beyond critical for people, you know, again, for routine, but also just to keep the blood flowing. So I might have to join you.
I did is I got my mixed fitness bike. I will say it's kind of hard. My ass hurt a lot after the first week, and then I had to kind of stop. And I just got to get back. I just got to get back into the groove, you know.
But tell us a little bit about mix in terms of like, how does that differ to, you know, what's out there and the other products that are out there?
Yeah, I mean, it's great because you can choose sort of your level and your time and, you know, your intensity. So I guess my problem is I always am too ambitious. You know what I mean? I should just start with the level 1 and work my way up. But it's like, you know, you wanna think that you're like a level 2 or 3. I know I'm not a 3, so, but you can kind of adjust your workout, and you can pick instructors that you like, which I found a few that I think are really great, and I like doing it to the 80s music, which is my jam. You know, you can like sit there and pedal away to 80s music. So that's what I've been trying to do. I have to, right? It's like you can't just drink wine all day, even though I do that too. At least I feel like I'm offsetting it.
I drink wine every single day, and
Yes.
it's something that I'd never done before the pandemic. I never used to, you know, when I would have a glass of wine or a scotch, it was always social. It was always with someone else, and now it's become, you know, it's become my treat. It's just become something that I do at the end of the day to, you know, reward myself and maybe take a little bit of the edge off. You know, obviously everything in moderation, but you know, exercise during the day, drink wine at night. There you go. That's the formula.
That's the formula. I'm the same way. It's hard to think of a day now where I don't have a glass of wine.
And I miss those days. I miss the days when you and I used to have glasses of wine together.
I know. I mean, I tell myself that if I'm going to have something to drink, wine is probably not so bad, right? Like relative to, you know, I'm not doing shots of tequila. I'm not drinking 5 glasses of beer. Beer is not terrible, but calories, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And as you know, I've lost about 20 pounds during this pandemic. I wonder if I hadn't been drinking wine and scotch every day, whether it would have been 30, but it's okay because, you know, I can't complain.
Fine.
I don't want to be greedy about that.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So Lynn, what I love about this is, you know, on the show, I always do fun facts about my guests. And I have to say, you know, I know a little bit about you, but I learned quite a lot about you in terms of going through these fun facts. So the first, and you're just going to have to explain this, that you should have been Clarice Starling from Silence of the Lambs. I don't even know what that means, but I want to hear.
So did you not know that I wanted to be in the FBI?
Oh, okay. All right. So tell that story.
So
I was trying to make the connection.
I went to school. I had a double major of criminal justice and English. I was basically really focused on joining either the NSA or the FBI. And when I graduated, I went through the process, which involves like, interviews, background checks, tests, all sorts of weird shit. And they basically said to me like, okay, I got a letter, because back then, no internet, so letter. It was, the good news is you passed. The bad news is we have a hiring freeze. This was 1989. So you can check back in 6 months to see if anything's changed, basically. So, I'm at home. I'm living at home. I'm like, I'm not going to sit around for 6 months at my parents' house to hope that maybe that, they have an opening or two, and then, only to be told it's going to be another 6 months and then another 6 months and so on. So I went into advertising.
So is it too late though apparently our intelligence organizations, I think there's going to be a fair amount of turnover, or there's been a fair amount of turmoil. Is it too late in one's life to decide to go into, as if you didn't have enough on your plate right now?
I've wondered that, there's something to be said for experience, right? And, maybe they need an inside person to infiltrate the agency network and find out all those criminal activities going on in the agency underbelly. But no, if it would be interesting to think if, there was a path for them to bring in seasoned professionals who had skills that might be helpful. But of course, I have too much on my plate. And I think at this point, I'm just going to let my daughter do it, because she's kind of interested in the same thing. So maybe I'll just make her be the FBI agent in the family.
Well, and the truth of the matter is you did go into the agency world. It was just a different type of agency.
Correct.
So another thing about you is that you said I'm actually an introvert, and and sometimes I always think as from like the agency business and the ability to understand insight, sometimes it's less about what someone says and more about why they chose that as one of their three things. So I just wanted to kind of give you that free rein to talk about what this means to you being an introvert, why you share that, and also how challenging it must be, I guess, to have been in such a leadership position as the CEO of such a influential organization. How do you cope in an organization where you have to lead and stand up and lead by example, but know that you're an introvert as well?
There are a surprising number of leaders who are introverts. And I think like a lot of us have learned to be extroverts. So I actually say that I'm a learned extrovert, because really that's what I am. But, I have these arguments with some of my friends who just say, you're not an introvert. And I'm like, yeah, I actually am. And they just disagree with me because I fake it really well. But, it's all about where you get your energy, right? It's like, do you draw your energy from being in social situations with lots of people? And that's kind of the thing that gets you inspired and motivated. Or do you get your energy more from one-on-one, just more intimate, sort of quieter types of, engagements? And I would say that's definitely me. I guess I chose that because I think, I do a lot of mentoring, I do a lot of coaching, and I think there are a lot of women who feel like you have to be a certain way in order to succeed. And yes, you have to be able to speak and to articulate a point of view and have a point of view, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it if you're, reserved, or you're shy, or you're an introvert, or you're just anxious, or you have, other things like that you're wrestling with. You could still figure out a way to, as I do, fake it till you make it.
I think that this idea of being a learned extrovert is an important point. And I've gone on my own journey, and I view myself based on like self-diagnoses as an extroverted introvert. But what I've really enjoyed learning a little bit more about this is that word that you said, which is energy. That is the dictionary definition, the difference between an introvert and an extrovert, which is where you get your energy from. And I think it's important, right? Because it goes back to even the subject of mental health. It's like we need energy. We need to feed our body. We need to feed our mind. We need to feed our souls. Sometimes it comes from other people, and sometimes it comes from things. But this idea of being a learned one, I think is important, because it shows people, I guess, that you can fake it till you make it, or you can figure out how to cope in, let's face it, the world is built for extroverts, but it doesn't necessarily, it shouldn't necessarily be built for extroverts, because it takes both types, right?
Exactly.
So now let's talk a little bit about your career, because you have a storied career. I met you. You were a client of mine. You know, you hired Evolution back in the day to present some startups and technology options to some of JWT's clients. I mean, you've seen this industry change so much. I could almost just do this, which I call the voice of God camera mode, which is just to focus on you, and have you talk for an hour on that. But it's interesting to me, Lynn, because right now the ANA Masters of Marketing is going on. I interviewed 9 of the CMOs. I'm listening to some of them talk today, and they're all talking about the same thing. You know, injustice and inequality and diversity and inclusivity. And that's awesome that all the brands are standing up saying this is important to us. It seems, though, that on the agency side, they're all falling apart due to kind of bad practices and bad behavior. So I would love for you to just talk a little bit about the world of advertising as it was when you led it, where it is today, and quite frankly, where you see it heading. Is there a future for advertising?
It's tough, right? I mean, I feel like when I started in the business, it was a completely different type of business. You know, I think what's happened, I mean, like it's happened to a lot of businesses, as things have become more digital and things have become more data centric, everyone can be an expert, right? So there is no sort of Don Draper who kind of, you know, magically comes in and figures stuff out, because now, you know, you have to test it. You have to multivariate test it. No, Don, the headline's wrong. It should be X, or it should be this color, or, you know, there's just this sort of redefinition of what, you know, creative looks like and what it takes to be creative. But I think the bigger issue in the industry is the talent issue, because the industry has been built on this model of having these roles and certain types of talent and paying people certain salaries. And suddenly when you have clients who are no longer willing to pay the same retainers, because, you know, they look at it and they're like, wait, I'm not going to pay $1 million to make a TV spot. That's crazy. And here I am now on the other side of it, right? With my own brand. I literally make videos on an app that I use called Video Leap, which I love. It's really dangerous because I'm not a creative, but I know enough, obviously, to be dangerous. And it costs nothing. You know, I'm literally making my own videos for nothing. So I can see why clients just don't want to pay agencies the kind of rates that they were getting. But the problem is, if the agencies don't change the talent makeup or, you know, the structure, then it's like you have a complete disconnect between the client expectations, because they still want to get what they want to get, and the agency's ability to deliver it. Because now what agencies do is they just fire the senior people who are making the most money and bring in junior people to do the same work, or double up, you know, the poor people that are left behind at the agency are doing twice the work. You know, as people are leaving, they're not, those jobs aren't being replaced. And so it's just created this vicious cycle of doom where I don't really see a way out unless you just completely are willing to blow the whole thing up. Meaning, like, you got to eliminate entire departments, entire roles, all the overhead. Like, you just have to change it, you know. And now with COVID, it's like, do agencies need the swanky office space anymore? You know, I mean, JWT had, when I was there, 4.5 floors on Lexington Avenue, which was being pared down to, I think it was 2.5. Now I'm not sure how many they still have, but like, even that, it's like, who's really coming in the office, and is that really necessary? And, you know, are clients going to be willing to pay for that? So they're just a lot of, oh, Joanne.
She said, what a computer or digital program
Joanne
can't replace is insight and originality.
She's right. She's right. But so Joanne and I work together actually at BBDO on Gillette, and she is 100% right. But the problem is, I think clients don't appreciate it. They don't recognize it and appreciate it because they think it's sort of commoditized now. You know what I mean? Like they just think, well, it might, you know, you might be creative, but in the past where you were like uber creative on a scale of 1 to 10, you were a 10 and I was a 1. Now I'm a 5 and you're a 6 or 7. You know what I mean? It's just, the gap is just so much smaller.
Leslie says there's no magic in the ad industry. Maybe agency talent people need to hire magicians. So
actually, that's a good idea. Yeah, maybe that will do a little. I think it's tough though, and I think what's happened is, you know, I see this with a lot of the other founders that I know now that I've met through MASAMI and whatnot. A lot of the younger sort of marketers are really just focused on digital acquisition. So they are focused on getting a great Instagram ad. You know, I spoke to somebody who's built her entire business on TikTok. And now I feel like they don't understand, though, that there's an entire ecosystem of storytelling that has to happen in content. And it's not just about the trigger finger on Instagram if you don't have the rest of the pieces of the puzzle together. So, you know, it's kind of an interesting time right now where, you know, a lot of the DTC brands I've spoken to don't really have their story down. They don't have their strategy. They don't even have the basics because they're just putting up pretty pictures and getting clicks. But then what happens is as digital advertising gets more expensive and Facebook is less efficient and Instagram's less efficient, you know, you just can't rely on that. You need to have all those other sort of things figured out. So you know, it's very easy for people to just dismiss strategy these days. That's what I find. Like, and you and I have experienced this with Beagle, right? How many of the clients, the startups that we worked with, where we went in and they had almost no strategy. They were in love with their product.
Right, no story.
And they would talk about the product all day long, but there's no brand. There was no cohesion at all to the story or to the brand identification or anything, right? It's just sort of.
Well, it's fun. It's funny because, you know, Leslie said maybe they should hire magicians. Tom, who is our resident philosopher, said maybe they should hire philosophers. And by the way, Steve said he just got Video Leap from the App Store. So yes. Steve, while you're buying things today,
you're going to love it and use it all the time.
Yeah, use Lynn's code, and we'll give you a code for to get what is it, 30% off? Well, is it 20% or 30% off? Let me go and just check.
I think 20, but yeah.
Yeah, we're going to give you an opportunity to join the macabre revolution very soon. But you know, Lynn, you said something that I think resonates, which is you have. I mean, I remember Mark Pritchard last week. He said, you know, a force for good without a force for growth, you're just you're just a philanthropist. A force for growth without a force for good, you're a mercenary. I think the same thing is happening between branding and acquisition, between, you know, this performance-based marketing obsession and then the ability to actually have gravitas, story, you know, purpose, strategy. The thing that brought us together was your vision, and this was your vision, that the agencies, I'll take a step back. Basically, when you approached me, you said, well, you've got all these companies like Deloitte and Accenture and E&Y and you know, KPMG, and they're management consultancies that are buying creative agencies and are trying to be more creative-like. But yet the creative agencies were not trying to buy management consultancies and be more change management-like. And I guess the bottom line is our clients, the clients out there, the brands, they're trying to sell stuff. We get that. What the agency business, I feel like, has fallen back on is solving problems, real business problems. And I think that was your insight, which is what happens when you combine the magic, the ability to tell stories but also to solve real business problems. And we still haven't seen that, and that's why these agencies are disappearing, right?
Yeah, you know, when I was at Arnold, one of the things I loved about it was there was a business strategy group. This woman, Lynn Power, headed it up. She's awesome, by the way. She's like really, really freaking smart, and every agency should have a Neela, but she left the agency business. She went client side. I don't think Arnold really ever replaced her, but that was always like a secret weapon for us because we could like size the market. We could speak that language to convert, you know, our crazy ideas, right? The advertising ideas into business results. And that seems to still be a gap where agencies just can't quite grasp or quantify, you know, the impact. And that's why clients glom onto the digital acquisition work, because you can at least see the immediate results and you know what's working or not working, as opposed to like, you know, I just did a podcast and I have no idea if anyone actually listened or did anything or whatever. You know, there's just so many things that we do that you just can't measure still. And you're kind of just hoping it works. But yeah, I think it's just a whole new world, right?
Yeah, Jan says, our job is to work the data into magic. Everyone has the data, few have the magic. Of Apple, Nike, and Dove. And Leslie adds, and certainly, Lynn, we've seen this as well with some of the companies we've spoken to, is the no strategy issue becomes a huge problem with sales efforts because sellers are only talking about themselves and their products. They're not understanding their client's business, and they're not solving long-term problems or figuring out where they fit into that ecosystem. And so everything becomes very project-driven, campaign-driven, and short-term by definition.
Well, I also think it was at Apple, Nike, and Dove that were mentioned. I mean, I think those are brands that have very clear strategies. And I would argue archetypes too. You know, I'm a big fan of archetypes. It's very clear what those stand for. You know, they don't veer off of that often. And if they do, they usually come back. And I feel like a lot of brands don't have that discipline or that focus or that clarity around who they are, what they stand for, what their role is in the world. And therefore, you know, it does tend to be short-termitis and focus more on sort of, you know, product attributes and hoping it sticks. And, you know, it might be good for a little while, but for the long term, usually those brands peter out, right?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, and we're going to segue into your entrepreneurial venture. But when I described you in the episode today, that's why I called you the explorer, because you turned me into a believer in terms of the power of archetypes, these Jungian archetypes. And you know, if it's true that the data is the paint and the creative ad person is the painter, Lynn is the painter of archetypes in terms of being able to create stories and make these amazing connections. And Joey, I'll give you the last word on the subject, which is when procurement is in charge, creative dies.
Okay, well, I'll just add to that. The problem is most of the holding companies are just big finance organizations, hence not really doing advertising or creative so much.
All right, so you leave the business. We start the HMS Beagle to help our clients navigate the journey to survival. But at the same time, something else happens to you, and I'm going to just leave it there and let you tell the story of how you became the CEO of a DTC brand, because it's the most gorgeous story.
Well, so my husband was also in the business, and he left about the same time I did. He was a publicist, so some of you may know him. And he decided to really focus on investing. And there was a brand that we were already investors in called 1906, which is a high-end chocolate cannabis company, which is awesome, by the way. Fantastic products. And actually, we got into that because Peter Barsoom was a client of Bill's at JWT. Everything overlaps.
Yeah,
our
small world.
Like, you know, 1 degree of separation. And actually, I think I might get the client wrong, but it was a finance client. It was like Merrill Lynch or something. I don't know. Anyway, So Peter leaves, he starts this cannabis company. We invest in it. We're one of his first investors. And Bill decides, okay, I'm going to get out of advertising too. Like, it's totally not fun anymore. But when he was transitioning out, there was a guy in his team at Publicis on Citibank named James. And James basically pulled Bill aside and said, hey, I could really use some advice. I've been working on this hair care formulation for like 10 years. And I think I have it now like pretty much nailed, but I have no idea what to do. Don't know how to go to market. Don't know how to do anything really other than I made these great formulations. And so Bill said to him, well, listen, I don't know anything about beauty, but I'll connect you with Lynn. She's worked on tons of beauty, which I have. I've worked on L'Oreal and Clinique and Nexus and all sorts of stuff. So he connects me with James, and I'm super cynical because I've worked on lots of big brands that weren't good. How is this one dude, literally like one dude for 10 years? I'm like, either you worked on it for 10 years because you couldn't figure it out and you're spinning your wheels and you don't know what to do. And it's just, you're some people just never get to the end, right? Is he one of those? Or is he working on it because he's a perfectionist and, he's trying to just make it amazing and he just can't quite get there? So I just was super cynical. But then I thought, well, maybe he's a genius actually, because, it's got to be kind of one or the other. You're either crazy or you're a genius to do that, because he was also spending all of his discretionary money on this. And his husband, Masa, was basically like, shit or get off the pot. Like, you got to do something with these products or just stop spending our money on them. So James starts telling me the story about, why he decided to create these hair care products and how he found the ingredient in Japan and, why it took him so long to make it, which, long story short, it's really hard to make clean hair care that is high performing. There's very few products on the market that are like that. And it's hard to find the alternative ingredients, and technology's changed a lot over the last 10 years. So when he started, there was sort of a limited palette of options, and now there's more. And so the products kept improving over the years to the point where they were like, oh, now we finally have something. So he's telling me all this and I'm thinking, wow, this sounds actually pretty damn good if it's true. So anyway, long story short, he gave me the products to try. I was pretty blown away. They're absolutely amazing. And he really did an unbelievable job. He's got this he's talent, intuition around how to make the stuff. And he's not a chemist. He's not a hairstylist, but he just knew in his gut that if you solve hydration, you're going to solve all the other hair problems that people have. And he was right. It's actually the #1 unmet need in hair care, which he didn't know from a data perspective. I knew that because I worked on L'Oreal, but he didn't know that. He was just going with his gut. So he came up with these things. So then basically what happened was I was like, damn, these are really good. Bill now, my husband, has this, investment sort of incubator, if you will, called House LaRouche. And I said to Bill, we have to do it. You have to invest in James. This is like this is a really good product. And so part of the deal was that he hired the Beagle to basically, launch the business, because James did not have the capability to figure any of that out. So I really took on that role of being his partner and the CEO and getting this thing into market. So we launched in February.
Now we're going to get back to this idea of timing is everything. And when you look back at your inevitable success in the future, it's one of the exercises we do sometimes, right? With the survival planning canvas, which is write, your acceptance speech, your victory lap. But when you do look back on your success, which will be inevitable, Lynn, you're going to basically look back and tell the story of how you launched a DTC brand in a global pandemic. You might as well have launched it, in the pandemic, because it was a month before, with all the challenges associated with not even being able to go and call on a salon, etc. But there are a few I think, pieces to the puzzle that help you, that prepare you to be built to last. One of them is the story. One of them is the ability, is the magic, the romance associated with it. I'm just going to ask you to talk about 3 things briefly, and then we'll talk about how you've actually been doing this in a pandemic. One is Makabu, and it's just it's a magic ingredient. So if you wouldn't mind talking briefly about that, and then I'll ask you about a couple of other things.
Yeah, sure. So that is our magic ingredient, as you said. It's an ocean botanical from Japan. It basically it's a seaweed that's part of wakame. It's like the bottom nutrient dense part of wakame seaweed. And it comes right from the Northeast. It's a town called Atsuchi, and it's part of Iwate, and they harvest it there. We work with a family-owned seaweed company who harvests it, dries it, pulverizes it, and sends it to us, and we stick it in our products fresh. But the key was that it's just super nutrient dense, and it acts like a sponge. So it gives you all the hydration, but when you powder it down, as opposed to using like an extract, which most formulations have, it allows you to like get a lot of active ingredient. So you can get this massive hydration, but without the weight. Because that was one of my concerns, is like I have very thin colored hair. And if I use heavy moisturizing products, it's like my hair is greasy. Those usually don't work real well for me. So we wanted our products to give you all the benefits of hydration, but without the weight. And Makabu is a secret to how you do that.
So obviously a great product with a piece of functionality or something that is differentiated. But then there's another aspect to it, which is the place that you found and you sourced Makabu. And basically what I'm showing right now is this small town village was decimated by the tsunami. So talk a little bit about that story, because there really is so much depth and richness to this origin story and how you set up the Makabu Institute.
Yeah, so Atsuchi was, as you said, devastated by the tsunami in 2011. And I went to Japan with James and Masa in 2019, and they're still rebuilding. And pretty much the entire town was wiped out, except for that ship that you see. But there's actually one small temple in the middle of the bay that survived. I have no idea how it didn't get wiped out, but it was like the only thing that survived. You can't see it from these pictures. I have pictures of it, but anyway,
amazing.
So when we went back, and now they're rebuilding the buildings. It's like I said, it's still not 100% where it was, but one of the biggest issues is that the bay itself, the ocean ecosystem, has been like completely thrown out of whack. And what had happened was, after the tsunami, the seaweed and the botanicals that would grow there stopped growing. They were migrating south. They had a huge sea urchin infestation. And we found this guy who felt a calling. He was an IT guy in Tokyo. And when the tsunami hit, he moved to Atsushi, which is like, it's like moving, to a little, it's like being where I am now in Sheffield, Massachusetts. You're in a little country town. And he started documenting what was going on in the bay. And he would dive in there and film it. And he realized that these sea urchins were creating a real problem because they're basically parasites that eat everything and, basically strip the area of the nutrients that the people rely on for their diets. And so I thought what he did was brilliant, because he basically was like, listen, we're the top of the food chain. We should eat the sea urchins. And people eat sea urchins there, but it's like a delicacy. Like they would eat it on holidays. It's like making a turkey, you know what I mean? For us on Thanksgiving, you don't do it every day. So he started doing a whole bunch of education around eating sea urchins all the time, like basically getting people to go bring them out of the bay and just eat them up. And it worked. He was able to like rebalance the bay pretty much single-handedly, this one dude. So we found him. We created the MASAMI Institute to fund his research, help fund his research, and help get that sort of ecosystem back on balance. And part of it for me was like, if you take from the earth, you should give back from the earth. Super simple. We take our ingredient from there, we should give back. But I'm also kind of disappointed at how many beauty brands don't do this. They don't have any kind of cause or environmental anything really. And so I just think the beauty industry is just not been great. If you think even of like a lot of the larger brands, they just don't really have any kind of social responsibility, or if they do, it's very light, you know, it's not embedded in their DNA. So we wanted to do it in a different way. We wanted to make it part of what we do, and just, you know, almost guide, you know, we talked earlier about brands not having a strategy or a vision up front. We wanted this to be something that guided what we do in the future. So for example, we were in plastic bottles, which has always bothered me because, you know, how can you be a pro-ocean brand and be in plastic bottles? But it's hard when you're in the shower because you can't, there's a lot of material to work. So we just are creating now a large size ceramic refillable with refillable cartons that will go in there. So that's one way to try to like move things forward. It's just, you got to try it and explore it and see what works. But that's our philosophy. And, you know, if nobody buys a ceramic bottle, fine, I'll try something else. You know what I mean? But when you're a brand that thinks it's important, you'll do those things as part of your innovation and your strategy, as opposed to make them afterthoughts, you know?
I love the story because there's a story, and then there's a story behind the story, and between the lines of the story are all these subplots about resilience and grit and pivoting. And, you know, if life gives you lemons, you turn it into lemonade. If the urchins are destroying, you know, macabre, you eat the urchins.
Exactly.
If ceramic doesn't work, you try something else. Even the name, you know, even MASAMI comes from the word my masa, and it has a meaning, the word MASAMI, but also my masa, you know, in terms of who masa is. And, you know, it's just a beautiful story of I mean,
that was couple. The inspiration for the name. It was Masa.
Yeah.
You know, we think of him our muse really, because he's the guy that kind of keeps us in check when it comes to, you know, are we doing the right stuff for the environment, for that part of Japan? You know, he's the one that connected us with the seaweed manufacturer. Oh, nice. Thank you. I hope you like it. Let me know what you think.
Thank you, Steve, for supporting Corona TV and supporting Lynn.
Yes, thank you. So Masa is really, he's just got like a pure soul. He's just one of these people. Hemp-based instead of plastics has a third. Yeah, I'm looking into all sorts of, I mean, we were looking at bamboo. We were looking at all kinds of things. It's not quite ready to have our formulas in there yet. The materials can't quite hold our stuff, but we're close. I think we're going to, hopefully in the next year, find something to replace our plastic. But anyway, where were we? Oh, Masa. Masa is just this like pure soul who keeps us on track with our mission, and is just a lovely human being, honestly. Like one of the just best humans I've met. And I knew I loved him because when I first met James and Masa came to my apartment for dinner, because I figured, well, if I have to spend an hour with this guy, at least I'm going to eat and not, like, I'm basically multitasking, right? And he brought Masa, and they came in and immediately loved my dogs. And they have a dog too, but I had one of my dogs has since passed away, but I had two dogs at the time. One of them was a big husky shepherd that looked really scary, but was very sweet. And the other one was this little Chiweenie who's sitting with me, who looks sweet, but is an absolute terror.
He is
and
the
Masa,
terror.
Was like the dog whisperer. And right then I was like, okay, I love him. Like whatever he says, I'm good.
No, that's the whole story. As I listen to you, it doesn't get old, but it really is a love story. It's a love, it's a love between a couple. It's a love for a product that is different, that works, that is of superior quality, and also a love for the earth and this idea of giving back. Thank you for sharing that with us. There's probably I want to make sure that we touch on the final subject that you wanted to touch on, but we could also carry that over into our Zoom after show. But the final thing I just wanted to ask you, could you give some advice to people, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 best practices, things that you, I hate the word, but I use it anyway, I can't take it back, but what you've learned as an operator, as an entrepreneur, about launching a business, a startup, and growing it and keeping it afloat during a global pandemic? What are the 2 or 3 things you've learned along the way?
I would say number 1 is you absolutely need a network of peers, partners, advisors, mentors, people you can learn from. That's super critical. And I'm so fortunate to have found a bunch of other female founders and some male founders too, but lots of female founders, lots of founders in the clean beauty space who have been incredibly generous at sharing, their insights, what's worked, what doesn't. And we talk a lot. I had a call today with a CBD skincare brand where we're comparing notes, and it's just really, really helpful to have that network. And, you do have to work at it. I mean, it's, you can't just launch and expect people to find you and give you advice. You do have to make an effort to build that network. So that's the first thing. Second thing is the team. I mean, I'm also lucky to have really, really amazing people that I'm working with. And I talk about this a lot because I do a lot of podcasts and stuff, but I don't really believe in this whole work-life balance thing. I think it's kind of bullshit, but I do believe in blending everything together. And maybe it's because my kids are older and I can do that. They're teenagers and I can drag them to shit. I took my daughter to a beauty trade show in January, made her work the booth. It was not her favorite thing to do, but you know what? It's like, it's all kind of, that's how it just works for me. Like, I work with my friends. I don't work with anyone I don't like. I actually, James and I are literally like family. We have become like family and Masa. And so find a team of people that you trust, that you like, that you want to spend time with, and recognize what capabilities you have and what capabilities you don't have. That's really important too, because I talk to a lot of founders who think that they have to be experts in everything. And I'm like, oh no, I'm definitely not like that. I'm very aware that there are things I'm not good at. And you know what? I have people who know how to do that stuff. And that's the name of the game. So I would say those 2 things. And then the third is just think about the whole ecosystem. Like I said earlier, don't get enamored with just, you got to get Instagram nailed and get those ads right. Yeah, that's super helpful, but it's not enough, frankly. And my attitude about DTC these days is you have to go where the people are. You can't expect everyone to go to your website. Yes, you want to drive traffic to your website, but if it means that you also have to be in some salons, which we are, that's great. And if it also means that you're in a couple retail boutiques, or that you're on Amazon, we're on Amazon, I say you need to be on Amazon. That's where people are, And I think there are a lot of purists still about what DTC is, and it's just not reality. I think the modern, check out my friends at Acure Organics. All right, I will. But I think modern DTC is about creating experiences, not just online experiences. And yes, having a strong e-commerce bent is key. But people want to touch, see, smell, feel, experience the product. So you need to have the opportunity to do that too.
Yeah, I love that last point as well. It's even something that James Rollins, the author, spoke about, which is when he writes, he always has a reminder to incorporate all 5 senses, and even in writing, to bring out that extra sensory experience. So I coined the term FOL, which are friends of Lynn. And I've never seen a network like you have, Lynn. And, I was thinking as you were telling those three pieces of advice, that the agency business as we know it may be over, but there is a new agency business. It's just a distributed one. And all the relationships that were created and formed are now flourishing and sprouting into new ventures and entrepreneurial ones, just at a smaller scale. So I think that's almost like a really happy note in terms of, as we see, one door closes, another one opens. The last thing that we'll chat about, and as I said, we might just carry it over into the after show, is an article that you sent around that was that you sent to me, that was written by Monica Lewinsky in Vanity Fair, and it's called "The Forgotten F Word in the Pandemic," and it's really about the subject of self-care, which is exactly why it's what inspired me to write the soliloquy today. And I think, today's conversation, I hope, has really, just like Makabu is so rich in nutrients and nourishes and nurtures, this conversation, I hope, nurtures people and nourishes people, because whether it's routine, whether it's finding order and meaning in life, or whether it's just through friends and family and networks and personal and professional fusion, it's all important. But I would love for you to just chat a little bit about what this article means to you and some of the things that you took away from it.
Yeah, no, I saw this and it really resonated with me, because I think, we all tend to talk about the pragmatic inconveniences of COVID, right? You can't get toilet paper, you can't go to your favorite restaurant as easily, you can't do this, you can't do that. But I think what we're not talking about is the F word that Monica's referring to as feelings, not the actual F word that you think she is, but this idea of mental health and how COVID is actually affecting us. And, we talked about being an introvert versus an extrovert earlier. And I think as an introvert, it's probably a little easier for me because I don't mind being alone and having my quiet time. I think there are people I know who really feed off the energy of other people and are just miserable right now. But I also see it with my kids. I have a 19-year-old and a 17-year-old. And my 19-year-old, who's an excellent student, and he goes to Indiana University, but he decided to stay home this semester, given what's going on. He's really struggling with online school. It's just so impersonal, and he just doesn't get the engagement, and he's just really, really not happy about the whole situation. My daughter, 17, also pretty unhappy, but not as sort of, she's got a slightly different situation. That's maybe a little better. But, nobody really talks about that impact and what's going to happen from a mental health perspective, as we all sort of like fall into depression and, anxiety and worry and all the other things that are happening around us, and what the ripple effect of that will be.
And almost that aftershock, right? That delayed reaction.
It is like a delayed reaction, but that's why that article really resonated, because she really points that out. And, we don't talk about it. We just sort of, muddle on. But I think it'll be interesting to see, to your point, the aftershock, right? Of all this.
Well, let's hope that we can do enough now to minimize whatever that shock would be. I've just pasted a link to that article in the comments, and you can go and check it out as well. Lynn, we're almost at the end. In fact, we're basically at the end. But one of the things I love to do is with my guests is do a little who said this quote. And I think the quote is probably the perfect way to end this episode and put a bow on top of that article. It's also a little sneaky, because in asking you who said this, the quote was actually in the article right at the end. But you might not have remembered it. But it says, "To suffer unnecessarily is masochistic rather than heroic." What a beautiful, poignant quote. And it was said by, do you remember? So it was Viktor Frankl, psychiatrist, neurologist, and Holocaust survivor. that basically says, we've heard this quote a lot. We often say it in the after show, which is, what is I'll probably butcher it now, which is this idea of pain is inevitable, suffering is a choice. But not so when you're with people and when you can surround yourself with people that are prepared to help. So you've helped many people's bodies and hopefully scalps as well today. I'm going to just flash up a couple of things. If you want to get hold of Lynn, continue the conversation, maybe partner with her specifically in terms of, helping this DTC brand go from strength to strength. The most important way you can do that is to actually buy the product. So if you go to lovemasami.com, use code CoronaTV for 20% off. It really is a great product and it really works. And it, came from that. Like all great startups come from a founder that says, why is the world like this? Why isn't it like that? And I remember James's story when he saw all of these supermodels walking the runway, how they would just finish, the fashion show and be scratching their scalps to the point where it was bleeding. And he said, we got to change that. And of course he did. If you want to follow Lynn on Twitter, just go to Lynn Powered or follow her. She's at Lynn Powered. And connect with her on LinkedIn as well. Just type Lynn Power. Lynn, I think that's everything I have from you. Thank you for being on the show. It was delayed, but this time it was one of those good delays. And we will continue the conversation in the after show a little bit. But I always like to give my guests the last word. So the last word is yours.
Oh, no, I don't need the last word. Thank you. Enjoyed being on. I think I'm still sort of, we'll talk more about the mental health issue on the after show, because that's still kind of something I'm thinking a lot about.
All right. Well, come join us. And of course, I will be back tomorrow with Faith James. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching Corona TV with your host, multiple author and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. Corona TV is the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. The after show on Zoom starts right now at bit.ly/Corona TV After Show. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show at CoronaTV.show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, text Corona TV to 66866 or visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.